Good afternoon, everyone. Today is February 1st, 2024, and welcome to Woodstock City Council. This hybrid meeting is being held in person here in council chambers and electronically in accordance with Section 238, subsection 3.3 of the Municipal Act and Section 16.6.24 of the City of Woodstock Procedure Bylaw. This meeting is being live streamed to the city's YouTube channel, and a recording will be posted on the city's website following the meeting. An agenda of the meeting can be found on the Agendas, Meetings, and Minutes page of the city's website. We do not have anybody attending virtually this afternoon, but we do have one counselor that is on holidays. So I'm hoping she's having a great time. There was no closed session today. Are there any disclosure of pecuniary interest? Seeing none. Matters arising from the minutes? And the minutes. Councillor Lauder.
Thank you. Moved by myself, second by Councillor Martin, that the minutes of the regular meeting of the Woodstock City Council held on January the 18th, 2024 be adopted.
Thank you. Any discussion or questions on that? Seeing none, all those in favor? Carried. No additions of the agenda that I'm familiar with. No presentations, but we do have some delegations this afternoon. So at this point, I'd like to welcome Susan Rayner and Mary Ann Burbank for requesting a solution to reduce speed on Wellington Street North. Please come forward to the podium. Oh, okay. Then welcome Marilyn Watson. Welcome.
Thank you. Been a while since I've been up here. I usually do it for the Southgate Centers. Well, good afternoon, Mayor Accioni and members of council. Thank you for giving us this opportunity to present to you our concerns regarding traffic issues on Wellington Street North, particularly between Ingersoll and Devonshire Avenues, and especially at the intersection of Brant and Wellington Streets. I've lived in the same house on this street for the past 49 years. Over time, I've seen many changes to this neighborhood. Some things change and some things don't. Northdale School remains as it has since the 1950s, a block away from the intersection of Brant and Wellington. What was once the Legion is now a church. What was once a residence is now a care home. What was once the site of a hospital is now, rumor has it, to become a subdivision of 44 townhomes and 23 detached homes, with the addition of another street and yet another intersection. What has changed over time and what continues to change over time, and not in a good way, is traffic and the speed at which drivers navigate through our neighborhood. It has been and is only going to get worse, and that is why we're here today. A strong core of individuals have worked tirelessly over the past several years to bring this issue forward. Back in 2017, a letter was sent to city officials regarding the speeding concerns. The official who responded suggested that Woodstock Police Services be contacted, and it is their responsibility to enforce the Highway Traffic Act. Sadly, the WPS are one of the worst offenders. The speed they travel on Wellington is one of the major complaints we've heard. There's rarely a week go by without 1, 2, sometimes 3 or 4 cruisers at a time racing northbound with pedal to the metal. The same city official went on to suggest that a request be made to have WPS patrol the area more regularly. Well, they pretty much do, but we'd appreciate it if they did it at a much lower pace. In early 2023, 2 of our neighbors took it upon themselves to visit every home in the area with a petition regarding the traffic and speed situations. Of the 44 residents who signed the petition, many expressed their concerns and their attempts at lodging complaints or contacting officials with dismay that they rarely received a response. During the summer of 2023, between May and October, Wellington Street was literally torn up and accessible with great difficulty, I might add, supposedly for residents only. We were all witness to some fine stunt driving individuals who chose to maneuver our streets regardless. In August, with the street reconstruction ongoing and prior to school opening, a request was made to the city to have a crossing guard, at least a temporary one, at the corner. The city did respond to that one only to say that it was a determination to be made by the school itself. The school's responsibility should be for the students, the building, and the surrounding property, not our city streets. At the present time, there are 15 school children and 6 parents, some with toddlers, strollers, or other kids in their care crossing at Wellington and Brant. Once the hospital subdivision is developed, there will be many more. There's a common thread here with what I'm telling you today, and that is that the buck is being passed. So we're here to make an ask of council. Please take our concerns seriously. We are requesting that you take action, be forward thinking, not reactive. Don't put our concerns under your desk blotters, refer it to a committee or table it for discussion. Please do something. We want the speed in this area to be limited to 4.
Sorry about that. Those watching at home, we had some technical issues, but if you don't mind repeating the question, Councillor Wismer Van Meer.
Yes, so I was just, one of the questions that was brought forward by the delegation in some prior engagement, just asking Mr. DeHaan is if there's been a traffic assessment that's been done since the construction completed on Wellington.
Your worship, through the councillor, we recently did traffic counts. We actually did them citywide, not just specifically in this area for the construction. As a matter of fact, Wellington Street, we actually waited till the fall to do those because of the construction. But we didn't do speed counts as part of those this year. We have done speed counts in 2016 and again in 2021.
Thank you. If I may, I just have a question towards that as well on the same topic. I know there's a master plan currently underway. So is there any additional steps of the speed or whatever in certain neighborhoods being looked at?
Your worship, development of a traffic calming policy is a big part of the transportation master plan that we're currently working on. We're hoping to create a policy that will put a cohesive, set standards basically, and put cohesive and unified. So we're using the same methods across the city where in the appropriate locations.
Thank you. Any other questions? Councillor Schanberg.
Again, question 3, Mr. DeHaan.
I'm gonna just stop real quick if you don't mind.
Sure.
Sorry. Any other questions for the delegation? And then I'll let her sit down and then we can discuss, if that's all right. Sorry, Councillor Martin. Sorry.
Thank you, Mayor Accioni, through you. You've made some very specific asks as a part of your delegation today, which I appreciate. Rather than just pointing out a problem, you've brought forward some solutions for us to consider. You've asked for signage. Are you thinking, static signs, or are you thinking the signs that sometimes show up your speed and it flashes with your actual speed that you're going, and then it turns green when you actually slow down to the appropriate speed? Is there a specific kind of signage that you have in mind? And I ask because there's, when you have your, just your standard sign on a pole, people become very blind to signage very quickly. And, they might see it the first or second time they go down the road, but it very quickly loses its effect. Is your goal, and this might sound controversial, but is your goal to slow down, to reduce the speed limit, or to actually slow down the traffic? Because we know that sometimes those two things don't go hand in hand, that you can reduce the speed on a sign. It doesn't mean the human behavior actually changes as a result. So I'm assuming your goal is to actually slow the vehicles down. So I guess my question is signage enough, or is it have to go in combination with enforcement, have to go in combination with traffic calming, which can be, actual physical structures on the road? Is there an end result that you're ideally looking for from us as council?
Ideally, we'd like people to travel 40 kilometers an hour on that street, which isn't happening at all. We did have a meeting. We've had a couple of meetings, and the signs that you refer to, I'm guessing that they're like the ones on Huron Street, where if you're going 60, it shows. And so our discussion got quite involved over that because those things really don't do anything. If it was photo radar, it would make a huge difference. But I don't think that's anything that the city's really been considering, and that's an expensive venture. But we really want something to indicate that there's children there. When school's out, the kids are riding their bikes. There's no boulevard there for them. And it's really gone beyond anything. And like I said, I've lived there for 49 years, and it's now with the new street there, it's more like a racetrack than it is a street. And it's a very busy thoroughfare. It runs right from the dam right down to the Southgate Center. So we're concerned. And that's why we're here today, to see if there is a resolution. The cheaper, the better. The faster you can have it happen, the better we'll feel for everyone that's concerned.
Thank you. Councillor Lauder.
Thank you. Through to the delegation. So if we had a crossing guard there, that's only going to accommodate the school term and the school hours. So that doesn't alleviate a lot of the speeding issue, does it?
It doesn't really, but it would help just for those individuals. Like, we watched them wrestle through the construction, and we've watched them, the one side of Brant isn't, doesn't have a sidewalk. There's the other side from where I live, there's not a sidewalk. And you see people walking on the road. And I think enforcement is really, really important. I'd like to see it happen. I know everybody on the group that we've been involved with would, and any neighbors that just want to express their concerns. We'd like it enforced, and we're asking here because we've gone as far as we can go, as far as our asks, and this is sort of our last resort.
Thank you. The mayor and myself are on the police board, and we can discuss that with them. I know that speeding is a problem all over. I almost wasn't here today because of a near accident we had the other day, someone went through a stop sign going an excessive speed. A second later, it would have been very bad. So I know we're having this issue throughout the city, and I know that doesn't answer your issue, but anyhow, thank you for coming and bringing this to our attention. Thank you.
Anyone else? Any questions or comments to the delegation? Then I'll just simply say thank you very much. Unfortunately, Councillor Lauder is correct. Being on the police board, we do hear about regular areas across the city that are known to be higher speeds. We'll certainly make sure we bring your presentation to the police board, but also to make sure it's also included in the current master transportation plan that's ongoing.
Okay, I'll just add one thing, Mayor Gioni.
Yes.
The information that I'm passing around, there is a study done by one city about traffic calming, and one of the things mentioned is police vehicles and ambulances. So if you refer to that page and look that site up, you'll see all the studies that were done regarding. It's not just here; it's everywhere.
It is,
So,
yes.
but thank you so much for having us.
Okay, thank you very much to the entire neighborhood as well. With that, I'm looking for a motion or any discussion, sorry. Oh, new motion, thank you. Councillor Tate?
Make a motion that Woodstock City Council direct staff to review the request from the delegation regarding traffic speed on Wellington Street North as part of the development of the Transportation Master Plan currently underway.
Thank you. Looking for a seconder, Councillor Wismer Van Meer. Now discussion. Councillor Tate?
Yes, through the chair, just was having a couple side questions with the city engineer on this. Just for everyone's benefit. So some of the questions I was asking was, would we able to get the school zone signs up right away on Wellington? I'll let staff speak to that. And the speed signs that are flashing, I know the comment was sometimes people don't pay attention, but they pay attention more to those than they do the ones that have nothing. The other issue is, yes, enforcement. It's the only thing that will stop them. I grew up on Wellington Street, so I realized the traffic there. And as I mentioned, I was never allowed to play out front because traffic was so bad and the traffic is worse now. And you are a block from the school. But it's difficult because Wellington's not deemed as frontage to the school, but that's the busy street because where the school is, it's not busy. We do have a problem everywhere. When I had my kids, I was on Houston Street and I was a block from the school and people would come down from Huron Park, race all the way down. And the same answer was the only thing that would do is enforcement. Now, I do know last year in the budget, we did add 4 police officers and they were hoping to get the traffic enforcement because we've been so short-staffed. So hopefully our two counselors on the police board will get further with that, but it's the enforcement is really important because you have to educate the drivers. That's the problem. And they don't seem to pay any attention. So I'll just let the city engineer or Mr. Locke comment to putting the signs up.
Your worship, through the counselor. In regards to the school zones, council passed school zone policy 4, 5, 6 years ago now. And at the time, the policy says that for a school to be part of the school zone, for a street to be part of the school zone, it has to have frontage on the school. At the time, that was an intentional decision because we didn't want to grade things out and then basically come to the point of making the whole city a school zone. So right now, the policy says if the street has frontage, if school has frontage on the street, then that street becomes a school zone, which means it's automatically 40 kilometers an hour. Council has the ability to lower speed limits wherever they wish. I would just mention that right now, everybody in the city who drives knows the speed limit is 50 unless otherwise posted. And they know they're not going 50. So I would question how much lowering the speed limit to 40 would make a difference. In my opinion, people drive the speed they feel comfortable at. In terms of children that play, perhaps Brian Connors can correct me if I'm wrong, but it's my understanding that we only put children to play signs near parks. There's not a park in this area, at least not yet. We did, as I mentioned earlier, we did do traffic counts and always stop warrants in 2016 and in 2021. Neither time were the warrants met for an always stop at Brant and Wellington. And 2021 showed that the 85th percentile for traffic speed at that time was 54 kilometers per hour, which means 85% of the people were driving 54 kilometers per hour or lower. So.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Tate.
So just further to that, there is going to be a park in that area. Part of that development is deemed a park. So just curious, do we have to wait till the development is done, or can we, I guess we can always do an exception, our council change and do an exception for that area. I'm just concerned because the traffic count was done in 2021, so now we're 2024, and the city has grown immensely in the 2 years. So I think we'll see a big difference with the traffic count positive on that area. And I'm also concerned with the bridge being closed, people starting to use Wellington Street now to get around the other way. So I think there's going to be more problems. I know when we say we make an exception in one spot, then we're going to open it up, but this might be a little bit different than the other area. So just a comment on the park area.
Your worship, through the counselor. I'll have some discussions with Public Works and Parks to see about putting them up before the park actually opens.
Councillor Wismer Van Meer.
I'm not sure who this would actually be directed at question-wise, but maybe Mr. DeHaan again. What steps can we take in looking at the possibility of at least a crossing guard at Wellington and Brant? I know that in some conversations I've had with some staff in the past, there's been, well, try to use the traffic lights to cross the street, but that is pretty far down, a block or two down for some of the folks that might live north of that area. So just what would be the procedure of potentially looking at whether or not a crossing guard is possible and could be put in this spot?
Your worship, through the counselor, staff recently, that was last, early this spring or last fall, did a reevaluation of all the existing crossing guard locations, as well as potential possibility of possible new crossing guard locations. And then we adjusted the crossing guards accordingly. And part of the what the warrants are is basically it's a mixture of amount of traffic, which I think obviously Wellington would have, as well as the number of children crossing at that location. I don't remember I suspect, I didn't look this up before the meeting. I suspect that the location was looked at that time. And if we didn't put one there, I gotta believe that it didn't meet the warrants.
Just to follow up, are we able to look at that again just to see if it was and potentially just follow up on that to see if it was assessed and if it will be reassessed?
Your worship, through the counselor, I can definitely double check what we did last year. And then we do try to check them on a regular basis yearly. Usually what we try to do is in the spring, when we get our co-op students come in before the grade schools go out, that's when we start doing our counts.
Thank you. Counselor Lauder.
Thank you. Through the mayor to Mr. DeHaan. What criteria is required to get a speed indication sign erected? I know that if I'm traveling anywhere and I'm over the speed, I do look at that sign and I do slow down, and I think that this is a calming. I know that the delegation, they didn't think that it did a lot, but I know it sure works for me. So I think it does for other people too. I've heard that.
Your worship, through the counselor, that is something that we would put criteria or the warrants in as part of the traffic calming policy that we're working on through the transportation master plan. Part of that plan will also say what traffic calming methods are good for different classes of road. Like some things you want to put on a local residential road, but you wouldn't consider putting it on a collector road. Things like that. Radar signs, yes, would be ideal for a collector road. And that's where we'd have to say, okay, what's the, and I suspect what it would be is, are we finding that the traffic is exceeding that 10 kilometers, it's the 85th percentile over that 10 kilometers over the posted limit.
Just one comment. I agree with Councillor Tate in that traffic with that bridge being closed, that there'll be a lot more traffic maybe on Wellington Street. So just a comment on that.
Thank you. Any other comments? Counselor Martin.
Thank you, Mayor Accioni. Through you, I would encourage the delegation to watch budget presentations in the next couple of weeks. I believe it's our first meeting in March that Woodstock Police Services will be coming and making their delegation, presenting their budget to us. I had an offhanded conversation with the chief just in the past week, and I know that WPS does have a goal of enforcement as a priority in the coming year and years, but that does come at a cost. You mentioned in your presentation enforcement by whatever means it takes. Enforcement it takes human beings, it takes vehicles, it takes uniforms, it takes a lot of resources. And so I encourage the delegation and the public to pay attention to the budget deliberations this spring.
Thank you. Took the words right out of my mouth. Yes, I mean, again, I wish this was the only area we're having troubles with. Unfortunately, it's not. This is something we are looking at as a complete city. And then to Mr. DeHaan, any idea when we can expect that report would be completed for those watching at home and for council, of course?
Your worship, I'm hoping that plan will be done by the end of the year. that council will accept it. We have the first PIC scheduled for March 20th. There should be a notice coming out in the next coming few weeks, letting the public know about that. There will be a virtual online meeting, but the boards and all the information that from that meeting will be posted on the website also.
And to you, Mr. Dahan, if we wanted to look at that as a special area, because again, I do agree, Wellington, like Springbank and Van Ave, a few of the main roads are becoming a big issue. Is there a possibility of, say, calling a community safety zone or something specific? Maybe not, maybe we can't tie it to the school, but looking at the whole area, knowing a park is coming, knowing a school is nearby, knowing Victoria, sorry, the old age home. Thank you. Is there, looking at that area, is there justification in your mind for us to look at that?
Your worship, we would have to look at what, like if we created a community safety zone, I don't think we have any, I know we don't have any criteria for that now. So if we looked at creation of such a thing, we'd have to look at what factors would go into play in such a creation, because there obviously would be requests for other community safety zones throughout other areas of the city. So that's something I'll talk to our consultants about, see what kind of criteria there might be in creating such a zone.
Yeah, I would like to hear about that as well. So thank you. Any other final questions before I call the vote? Okay, seeing none. All those in favor? And that is carried, none opposed. So for those watching, basically that means it's going to be included as part of that study. As you hear, it's not done. It's not going to be until probably later on this year. But in the meantime, we will actively be looking at different ways this neighborhood and others, for those watching at home, can be done sooner than later. So thank you very much for coming. Thank you. No consideration of planning reports or consideration of correspondence tonight. No staff presentations, no mayor's reports, no counselor reports, but we do have department reports, starting with administrative services. 14A.1 Court Security and Prisoner Transportation Transfer Payment Agreement. Looking for a motion. Counselor Lauder.
Thank you. I'll move that Woodstock City Council authorize the mayor and clerk to sign the transfer payment agreement with His Majesty the King in right of Ontario, as represented by the Solicitor General for the Court Security and Prisoner Transportation Program, and that the necessary bylaw be read.
Counselor Tate, discussion or questions? Seeing none, I'll call the vote. All those in favor? None opposed. That is carried. Next up with engineering. 2023 annual building report. Looking for a motion on the floor. Counselor Schanberg.
The Woodstock City Council received the 2023 annual building report as information.
Thank you. Looking for a seconder. Counselor Martin. Discussion. Counselor Schanberg.
Yeah, from the mayor through to the engineering department, I guess without going through the entire report and basically reading it to us, talk about the astounding increases in numbers for building permits in all areas, but specifically commercial in the last 12 months.
Your worship, through the counselor. Yeah, and excuse me, 2023 was a good year again for the city building department. We're up from last year was of 199 million to 280 for 2023. The commercial sector went up from 13.5 million last year to 40.3 million. A lot of that due to development at 1510 Dundas Street, a new hotel on Lampman Place, and a new medical building on Finkel Street. Both, I should say not both, but ICI, the whole ICI district of, sorry, I should say, so commercial, industrial, and institutional sectors for building. Because of the size of the projects, they can vary widely from year to year. one year you might have one project that's worth more than the next year's 5 projects alone, depending on the size. So, but yeah, it was a good jump in the commercial sector.
Continue.
I guess with that in mind, with the tail end of the second half of your answer, when the building permit comes forward, for example, for the brand new school on the north side of Piddock, give us an idea sort of day in and day out what the inspector cost recovery on a building permit is versus, say, just a simple single family home.
Your worship, through the counselor, as you know, the building department is self-funding. We have a net zero budget. So if we pull in more in building permits than we actually spend in wages and everything else, that money goes towards our reserve. If we end up having to spend more than what we pull in permits, we pull the money out of the reserves. Right now, the building department has a positive reserve, so we're sitting pretty good. But generally, generally we recover the costs of what it takes to review a permit. In talking to the CBO and the deputy CBO, we don't track every permit in terms of how much time is spent specifically on one, because so you get your permit application, you get your staff to review it. They review it for the zoning and then and a number of other things. Then they get the drawings and they review it for the building, make sure it meets building codes. Then there's the field inspections, and all this varies on depending on what type of project it is, right? Like if it's a house, there's maybe a half a dozen or so visits throughout the construction of the house. Whereas if you have like a hospital, you're there every day for a year or two. But like I said, we don't cover the costs for every build or every permit. So I can't tell you exactly which ones we're actually making money on and which ones are not. But they did kind of estimate that actually the bigger projects, the larger commercial and industrial projects, actually are probably more efficient, more than say like the smaller decks or additions.
Thank you. Any other comment? Councillor Shamberg.
Just want to add, there's any amateur statisticians out there, the building permit reports go back to 2020 or readily available online for people to sort of see how things have changed from single detached homes versus multifamily residential and also so many other areas like commercial and institutional.
Yes, I actually, it was a very good report. I enjoyed reading it, going over 370 new units being brought into the city of Woodstock, but a breakdown of single family homes to apartments and everything else. It was quite interesting. But there was a little bit on social media. I just want to let them know that when we say $280 million worth of permits, I suppose that's a construction value. It's got nothing to do with what the city itself makes off of that, to Councillor Schadenberg's point. So yes, we saw a lot less permits. If I can't remember, I think it was 763 permits in 2022 versus 600 permits in 2023. So we saw less activity, but much higher value of those permits. So, and with that, any other questions? Councillor Martin.
Thank you, Mayor Accioni. Through you. I'm curious, when this report says that the number of residential units in 2023 is 497. I hope I'm reading that correctly. And yet on the province's housing supply tracker, it indicates that our 2023 housing starts are only 403 and that we are under our goal. Our goal has not been met, is we're listed as red, not met. Can someone rationalize that out for me? Thank you.
So your worship, through to Councillor Martin. Yes, the total number of residential units issued for 2023 is 370 new residential units. The housing tracker by the province does indicate that the city only completed 120 units. So as we understand it, the data source for the provincial housing tracking numbers come from the CMHC Housing Completions and Absorption Survey. The problem, and this is what we identified in the housing pledge, is that CMHC will only complete that type of a survey in a census metropolitan area, which is a community that has a population of, I believe, 100,000, which Woodstock does not. So Census Canada is the one that determines whether a community is a census metropolitan area or a census agglomeration area. We are not a census metropolitan, we are a census agglomeration. So CMHC, as we understand it, does not do that type of survey for a census agglomeration. So there's a data fracture with what the province is using. The good news is the province appears to have opened their eyes to the data gap. And there is a meeting that I have with AMO tomorrow with several other communities who are in the same situation as us. And the province is asking for our input in ways to diagnose the problem and ways to fix the problem.
Perfect. Thank you for that explanation. Because the two numbers just weren't mathing for me, so I appreciate that.
Any other questions or comments? Seeing none, I'll call the vote. All those in favor? And that is carried, none opposed. Nothing from cultural services, parks and rec, economic development. Clerks, though, we do. Committee appointments, looking for a motion on the floor. Councillor Wismer Van Meer, seconded by Councillor Martin.
That Woodstock City Council appoints Anita Griffion to the Accessibility Advisory Committee for the term ending November 14th, 2026. And I hope I pronounced her last name properly. My apologies if I did not.
Thank you. Any discussion? Or questions? Seeing done, I would just like to say thank you to everyone that does put their name forward for all these committees. It can certainly be a very tough task to go through and choose them. So please do not get discouraged. If you are applying, please realize the number of applicants for a lot of these groups, but I please ask you to continue and hopefully you'll have success on a committee. And thank you to all those on committees because we do a lot with them. And with that, I'll call the vote. All those in favor? None opposed. That is carried. Nothing from the CIO department, human resources, fire, public works, or IT. Nothing from special committee advisory task force reports, no notice of motions or new business that I'm aware of. No. Now we're into draft bylaws. Councillor Lauder.
Thank you. Moved by myself, second by Councillor Tate, that the following bylaws be given a first and second reading. 9663-24, a bylaw to authorize the mayor and clerk to sign an agreement with His Majesty the King and the Right of Ontario, represented by the Solicitor General for the Province of Ontario for the Court Security and Prisoner Transportation Program.
Thank you. Questions or discussion? All those in favor? None opposed. Councillor Lauder.
Thank you. Moved by myself, second by Councillor Schadenberg, that the following bylaws be given a third and final reading. 9663-24.
That is carried. And tonight, that brings us to the end. Tonight, we're going to start with Councillor Martin.
I think I got to start last time too. I think so. Or maybe just in my head. I just want to take a moment and say that advocacy works. For my first year as a counselor, took on the task of advocating on behalf of legislation to stop the Harassment and Abuse by Local Leaders Act. And it has been a year of putting forward motions, of talking to the media, social media posts, a trip to Queen's Park, rallying other communities for support. And finally, at Roma last week, a number of us wore our Accountability Now t-shirts that I wore at our last council meeting. And it got noticed. The Toronto Star picked it up. CTV News actually used a photo of Councillor Leatherborough and myself in our t-shirts from our council chambers in their B-roll. Mike Schreiner from the Green Party spoke very articulately about the need for this legislation. Bonnie Crombie, leader of the Liberal Party, also spoke about our advocacy work and encouraged us to continue on. Merritt Stiles mentioned it, wore her shirt throughout parts of the week. And finally, after Roma and this topic being in the news throughout the 3-day conference, the Toronto Star wrote an article that under pressure, the Ford government is now readying a law to punish local politicians who harass staff. So sometimes we wonder that when we go to delegations and we sit in front of ministers, does that work actually make a difference? And I will say that after a year, we are finally seeing some movement on this, which means a lot. Now, will we see legislation in the next 8.5 minutes? Probably not. But we know that the pressure is on. And I just want to encourage not just our own council, but other councils around that if you take the steps and you articulate and lend your voice to important causes, it can make a difference.
Thank you. Councillor Lauder?
Thank you. So tomorrow is Chili Charlie at Southgate at 7:30 in the morning. And let's hope the prognosis is that the winter is over. And just to remind people that the bridge on Highway 59 is closing February the 14th. There'll be the northbound only. And so those who coming in from the north going south into Woodstock have to take different routes, either the 11th line, Fanshawe Road, or County Road 4 and Tecumseh. So if I'm late for any meetings, you'll know I'm on one of those trails. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Tate?
Thank you. Speaking of accountability, my comment is to the public, be careful who you vote for and pay close attention. So I was reading the paper yesterday and greatly upset when I saw that Thames Valley trustees voted not to allow the police in school program. And I'd like to thank our 2 Oxford trustees who did vote in support of it. This is a very big thing to me, and I blame a lot of it on some activists that's gone on. The policing is a very difficult job. And the one thing that we should foster is good communication and community within the schools with our kids. The one comment I think that I really took exception to was this is from one of the people that voted, says, I don't think we have the evidence that this program benefits our students. Our role is to support student well-being. It isn't to build relationships with local police force. At the end of the day, our most important role is to support student well-being and achievement. Well, just for information, the police are part of the community. If there's something going on in somebody's house and the child doesn't have anybody that they trust or can reach out to, if they have developed a relationship with the police, that's their number one issue. The reason, I mean, obviously I have a policing background, but I have a close friend of mine that grew up in public housing. So everybody in public housing had a poor view of the policing because the police were always there for a negative reason. And that's normally why you see the police, it's negative. So it has to be positive. This one person, when he was younger, one of the police officers took him under his wing. And from that day forward, had a really good relationship. When this officer got older and retired, this person who ended up looking after this officer, he could have gone the way of a lot of his friends, ended up in the detention, gone the wrong way. He ended up a very successful business person. So I've always said, whatever it is, if you can reach one person, it's important. And to me, this was a very, very important thing for the kids in our schools, especially with mental health, the drug addiction issue. You have somebody that of authority who you respect, you understand, and there is a relationship so you can reach out. So once again, be careful when you're voting. Thankfully, our Thames Valley people voted in favor of it. Unfortunately, it didn't pass, but every level of government who you vote for is important, and accountability is the #1 issue. That's all I have for today.
Thank you. I'm just going to add, I was quite disappointed with that vote too, a 7-6 vote for those wondering at home. Councillor Wismer Van Meer.
Just a couple of quick notes. Today marks the beginning of Black History Month, something that's celebrated not only here in Canada, but worldwide. Some great organizations and groups are doing amazing things throughout Oxford County and here in Woodstock that you can be involved with, whether it's just learning a little bit about Black history within Woodstock and Oxford County. We've got the Oxford County Library. I know our local library at Woodstock as well, but the Beachville District Museum, the Ingersoll Cheese and Agricultural Museum, lots of great events that they are going to be hosting, as well as just following them on their social medias as they share stories of what's happened here in Oxford County. I just want to congratulate Councillor Martin, who was appointed the chair of the Southwest Public Health. I guess it was this week, wasn't it? So congratulations, and I'm excited for you and hope you enjoyed that. Roma was a really great experience. I didn't get to attend that last year. Unfortunately, it didn't work out for me to attend, but it was a great experience. One of the sessions I sat in on was the gender-based violence and responding to gender-based violence. And a couple of things that just stuck out to me when I left was some stats that gender-based violence and intimate partner violence is costing Canada about $7.4 billion a year. And within 1 year from November 2022 to 23, we saw about 65 women and children that were victims and lost their lives to that. So a friend and a counselor from Sault Ste. Marie, Councillor Caputo, at Roma in the Bear Pit, addressed that topic with the ministers and spoke very passionately. Of course, we know what happened in Sault Ste. Marie last year with the death of her name slipped my mind, sorry. Ashley was her first name, and her 3 children. So we just keep pushing our Ontario government to recognize that gender-based violence is an epidemic in our province, and we hope that that is something that people will continue to speak up about. And I just also want to recognize, I'm sure many people have read this or heard the news that Bonnie Hartley passed away Sunday. Bonnie was very heavily involved in Woodstock, especially with the arts. She did a lot through the theater, from the Woodstock Little Theater to Theater Woodstock to the FOAP, which is the one-act plays. Of course, she was a teacher. I always asked her not to hold it against me that she taught my husband in grade 7 at DM Sutherland, but Bonnie's daughter, Bronwyn, and I have been friends since high school, so I've known Bonnie for a long time. And she'll be greatly missed in this community. So we just are thinking of Bonnie, her husband Jim, and her children and grandchildren, who all lovingly called her Omi.
Yes, well said. And last but certainly not least, Councillor Schoenberg.
Just a reminder, the Rec and Leisure Fair is on Sunday, March the 3rd. It's organized by the Woodstock Recreation Advisory Committee. And of course, the special events for the city of Woodstock. Kind of a last call that the committee there could probably still have 1 or 2 more tables still filled from either sports groups or service clubs, hobby groups, or the arts and whatnot to be able to promote their activities. And that being said, Colleen Collins from our communications department hosted the Rogers TV show, What's Up Oxford, the current episode that's on Rogers TV locally. And Ryan Knappman, who's the new chair of the Rec Advisory Committee, was one of the guests on that show. So that kind of ties everything together. But so was Brad Hammond from the talk about business investment in the city of Woodstock, and also a feature on Family Day in the city of Woodstock coming up too. So that was all important. And a reminder, the Woodstock Minor Ball is taking registrations. You can find Woodstock Minor Ball, of course, on Facebook or their website for the upcoming season. And what's interesting, they have leagues, house leagues from ages 3 up to 18. So it's a good way to make sure your child gets in on one of those leagues.
Thank you very much. Let's see, what hasn't been mentioned. Camp registration, of course, open up today. I hear it's been a very busy day so far for our Parks and Rec department. So congratulations to all the staff. That means obviously we've got what people are looking for. So thank you all on that. The Groundhog Day, of course, is tomorrow morning. I will be at Southgate Center and gonna get that whisper in the ear to find out if it's going to be a short or longer winter. With the, looking at the weather earlier today, though, with 5 to 8 degrees, let's hope spring's almost here. And I guess the moral of this afternoon's meeting was definitely please slow down. It's happening all over the city. We get it. We hear it on a regular basis as counselors, of course, as mayor. And each of us control it with our right foot. Let's just all slow down, be safe, leave 5 minutes, 10 minutes earlier if we have to. We know well ahead of time where construction areas are going to be. City staff as well as county send out lots of information ahead of time. We know what's going on. So please don't act surprised and don't take it out on the neighborhoods when you're speeding and running late. No offense, Councillor Lauder, if if you're late. But no, in all seriousness, let's just take the responsibility on each other for our own sake and safety of others, please. Goes all year round. And with that, looking for a motion to adjourn. Councillor Schattenberg, seconded by Councillor Wismer Van Meer. All those in favor, we are adjourned. Thanks, everybody. Have a great afternoon.